Hey there my friends, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to be working with Pastel, PanPastels and pastel pencils on pastel matte paper. The paper I'm using is by a company called Clairefontaine, and I've just cut down a small piece it's around about 9 inches by 6.5 inches. So I've sketched out a rough sketch excuse me, on a different piece of paper, transferred the sketch over onto this piece of paper. I've applied a little bit of PanPastel to the background, taped off the area that I'm going to be working on with acid-free washi tape, and then get started with the PanPastels. So here I'm using a Sofft tool. It's got a little replaceable foam pad, and they're also by PanPastel. Talk about those quite a lot in my other pastel tutorials if you want to take a look at those. But it's just simply different shaped plastic tools with different shaped foam ends that you pop on. You can take them off. They're interchangeable, replaceable, washable. They don't last an awfully long time, but they last long enough to do several small paintings. Okay, so the main thing is with pastel painting, how I work is I like to apply base coat layers. So the base coat layers, I generally sort of 98% of the time build the base coat layers up with Sofft pastel. Now this can be in the form of PanPastels such as you've got here, or they can be soft pastel sticks like Unison or Rowney. Loads and loads of companies produce soft pastels, so that gives you a rough idea. You build up your base layers, and then I apply the detailing on top with pastel pencils. We'll get to that later. Now this is a really long video. It's nearly an hour, so just bear with me or skip forward to the bits that you want to watch. I just wanted to cover quite a lot in this one video, and then I'll do some future videos and break everything down into smaller bite-sized sections. So at the minute it's quite self-explanatory. I'm working from my own reference image. It's an image I photographed a snow leopard in Twycross Zoo. That's in Warwickshire. I believe it was 2010, 2011 when I took this photograph. Okay, so I'm just working with a limited palette. So as you can see, I've just sorted out sort of 5-6 colours there, and I'm just applying them light to dark and dark to light, because you can work both ways with your pastels. But I'm just referring to the reference image I have up on screen next to me. I don't print out any of my reference images. I simply work from what I can see on my screen. So there you go. So it gives you a rough idea. You're not wanting to put any detail in at this stage because it's all going to get covered up. Now for those of you that haven't got or don't want to buy things like Sofft tools, I've got here a very cheap, I believe it was from the pound shop, a selection of foundation applicators, I guess you'd call them, for makeup. I just want to show you what can be done with these. You don't have to go and buy everything that you see other people using. See what you've got around your home. If you are going to use something that you've already got in your home, make sure you give it a really good wash. Make sure there's no oils in there, no remnants of makeup, or if you're out shopping, just pick a new one up. I would advise you give it a good wash when you get home, because you don't know what products have been used in the manufacture of these tools, and you don't want to be putting anything untoward onto your artwork. So just wanted to show you that you can apply soft pastels with applications that are generally used, or applicators that are generally used for makeup. So whether that's makeup brushes, makeup sponges, anything like that, just give them a go. Use what you've got in the home. The best art products are the ones you've already got, and the worst thing in the world is to have art products and not be using them. So utilise what you've got at home before you're making new purchases. So as you can see, I've built up the form of the subject. So just by using As you saw before, there were 5 or 6 PanPastels I was dipping into, just to give me a general feeling of the form of the animal. So what's underneath all that fur, the structure of the head underneath all that fur. Don't forget, all of this base coat will be covered up with the detailing of the fur, but not completely. So it's going to look like a mesh. You're going to have your top layers of hairs with like a mesh, where you can see all of the base coat underneath. So the darks and the lights need to go into the correct areas at this point, because that will show through to the finished piece. You'll see, you know, I'm not doing a very good job at describing it at the moment, but you'll see as the painting takes shape exactly what I mean. So the base coats are just as important as the final coats that you do with your pastel pencils or paintbrush or whatever medium you're working in. I'm completely self-taught, so in all the mediums I work in, I generally work the same way, unless it's something where I can't put lighter colours over dark, such as coloured pencil would be a bit tricky. So I work that dark to light to dark instead of dark to light. But with pastels, oils, acrylics, you can work both ways. You can work dark to light and light to dark. And don't forget, there's nothing that you can do that you can't put right. So don't be frightened of making mistakes or anything like that. It's always a learning process. Every single painting you'll ever do is a learning process. You're going to learn something from everything you do. And that's the same for me, and that's the same for everybody else who's creating artworks. So still working on form, looking carefully at my reference image to see where the lights are, where the darks are. You can blur your image if that helps, blur your reference image, or squint just to get that blurry effect. Try and look past the detailing at this point. Don't focus on the detailing of your reference image, focus on the lights and the darks. Try and find out where your mid-tones are. And really, this base coat is all of the mid-tones. So it's the darker mid-tones and the lighter mid-tones. I'm not going on with real darks, because that will come in later in the painting. Not going on with the lightest areas, because again, that will come on later in the painting. So once you're happy with your base coat, and the form of the animal or subject, whatever you're working on, looks as though it is what it's supposed to be. I mean, you can tell pretty much that this is a mammal. It looks furry, looks warm. And the basic shape is there. So even to somebody who didn't know what you're working on, they'd pretty much guess you're working on a big furry mammal. So happy with that. You've got the shape correct. So you move on to the next layer as such. This is just how I work. I want you to take the techniques that I'm trying to explain to you and try and apply them to the subjects you're working on. All of my works on YouTube are copyrighted to myself unless I specify otherwise, because they will be sold in galleries, etc. I will be making prints from them. But the idea is for you to learn techniques from me that you can then apply in your own works. So this one, I'm now just redefining the shape of the eyes, because things like this can so easily be lost when working with a soft medium like soft pastel. It's quite easy to lose your guidelines, and the eyes have got to be right. Now sometimes I'll do the eyes first and then go in with these soft pastels, but then you've got a tendency that you might have to go into the eyes again and reapply them to get the shape back if you've lost it. So this way is a little bit easier, a little bit quicker. There was about, I would say, about 4.5 to 5 hours overall of footage that I'd filmed, but that included the sketch and things like that. So I've narrowed it down, so we've got about an hour going on today. and it just slims everything down, makes it easier viewing for you, and hopefully I won't lose my voice halfway through, although maybe some of you are wishing that I did, but hey ho. Okay, so we've gone on with a dark pencil. These are Caran pastel pencils that I'm using at the moment, and they're really soft, very blendable. They do retain a point, and I do use them during the majority of this painting. I will be using other pencils too. So I'll just quickly run through the supplies at the moment. We've got Clairefontaine Pastelmat paper. We've got an acid-free washi tape. We've got the PanPastels and the Sofft tools. Then we're going to be using the pastel pencils, Caran, Carbothello, Derwent, Faber Castell and Rowney. They're just some of the ones I'll be using today. Whatever you've got at home, use what you've got. They all do the same job. Some of it's just a little bit easier with some and a little bit harder with others, but they'll all do the same job. So with the eyes, I try and imagine that it's not a flat surface anymore. It has to look orbital, it has to look round. Now, a good way of practicing eyes is to draw apples, oranges, cherries, grapes, anything like that. Obviously you've not got, well, I don't know many people that would have eyes lying around the home. So if you want to practice eyes, practice drawing things like grapes and cherries, because it gets the shadowing in the right place, highlights in the right place, and it's the right shape. So we need to be thinking all the time that the eye isn't just the part we see, but it actually goes back into the skull. It's a complete sphere, and we need to get that feeling. Now, the way to do it, even if it's not on a reference image, is I generally, 9 times out of 10, go around the edges with a darker colour. Now, if the animal is looking directly into sunlight, for instance, on the photograph there won't be any darker edges around the edge of the eye. And it looks great, it looks perfect on a photograph, but if you were to replicate that in a painting, it doesn't look too good. It looks false. Even though it's correct to the photograph, it still doesn't look right in the painting. So that way you use a little bit of artistic license, and I generally pop in a few darks around the edges, again to make the eye look round. Your reference image is always only a guideline. I don't know anybody that would ever create a painting and then have it hanging next to the reference image. So the reference image is for you, just to give you guidelines to create your piece of artwork from, so it doesn't have to be exact. This big cat, this Snow Leopard I was recreating, I did alter his eye colour slightly. I didn't alter the position of the eyes, because that's something you really don't want to mess around with, or the position of the nose or the mouth or anything like that. But coloration in animals, unless you're doing a commission for somebody, coloration can be played around with. If you wanted your big cat or your dog or whatever to have a slightly different hue in the colour of their eyes, then go for it. Just practice it on a scrap piece of paper to make sure the colours go well together, and then yeah, feel free to play on your projects and do them how you want to do them. It's your work of art. This is my work of art, this and already exists. Obviously that's why I don't encourage people to copy other people's paintings even in a tutorial, because my art already exists. I want you to be able to create your art, use my techniques, but to create your art and to enhance your style. If you're forever copying somebody else's tutorials, you'll find it very, very difficult to develop a style of your own, because you'll be sort of anchored on that other artist's style instead of free reigning a little bit. So even as a beginner, I would always suggest that people come up with their own ideas of what they want to do. And when I've taught in person, my students, I would encourage them to come up with ideas that, what do you want to create? What do you like doing? You know, what do you enjoy drawing? What do you see in the world around you? And then just pull little ideas out of that and enable them to be creative themselves. Anyway, back to the eyes. So building up layers and layers. YouTube, with all of the videos that are on YouTube, and there are 9 times out of 10 they're all sped up, gives people a really false idea of how long these projects take. As I said, there was a 5.5, I guess, even hours, and I've sort of clipped it and snipped it and shortened it down to an hour for you today. So just take your time. Whatever you're working on, don't rush it. If it's worth doing, it's worth doing well. And if we rush, that's when we make mistakes. So, and although mistakes are sometimes a good thing because it's a learning tool, it's a tool just like anything else, because you learn to correct things that you're not happy with, you don't want to be making them all the while. And another thing, all paintings go through the ugly stage. So, yeah, just if your painting or drawing looks ugly, it's not finished. So, yeah. And always keep photographs of your old work as well, or keep your old work. I see a lot of people and they throw pieces away because they're not happy with them. But it's nice actually just to keep your old works, and then if you're having a bit of a dull day and your works aren't turning out the way you want them to, take a look back at the work you did last year or the year before last or even last month, and hopefully you should see some improvement. I'm not known anybody to get worse. People do progress. It's just that some people progress quicker than others, but we all progress. So stay with it. Don't throw anything away. Keep a photographic record of your works, and you'll see that you're improving with every single drawing, every single painting, every single doodle. Just keep going. Don't give up. Okay, so I added the darks to begin with, and then I've added some greens, just 2 shades of green and a yellow ochre. And now I'm going in with the Caran dash pencils again. They're lovely and soft, very blendable. They're quite expensive, but they are worth it. They last a long time. And I'm just deepening the colours round the edges and then blending them out as they come towards the centre of the eye where the pupil is. And these colours weren't in my reference image, so I'll just let you know that. The reference image of this Snow Leopard, his eyes were just sort of quite a plain bluey green, sort of an aqua colour, but there was no darkening around the edges at all because he was looking out the window straight at me and my friend Dawn. So all of this is artistic license. That was a big sigh. I didn't mean to sigh then. I'll just have a drink. So darkening again, pushing that eye. You want to imagine that eye just goes and slips underneath the eyelids. It's got to look round. If anything, in a portrait, the eyes have got to be right because they are the things that people focus on. If you look at a photograph of somebody or a photograph of an animal, the eyes are generally the thing that you're drawn to, the thing that you look at. They do need to be right. If they're positioned wrong, or you've got one pupil up and one pupil a little bit down, it's noticeable straight away. So you do need to get those eyes spot on. So a little bit of a different camera angle for you now, using my iPhone to do a little bit of filming. I just want to show you here that I am working the pastel pencil in tiny circles because it's sped up. It's running at 150% at the minute. It's hard to see from the other angle, so I thought I'd film from this angle and show you how I'm working in tiny circles and blending in towards the middle of the eye. Another thing is, I've seen some artists on YouTube that work one eye, then they complete one eye, and then they'll start on the other eye. I generally don't do that. The simple reason is I like to build both eyes up at the same time. Because, knowing me, because I get a little bit sidetracked, as you can imagine. I'm listening to podcasts and things while I'm working, or I've got YouTube playing in the background or something. And I think I'd forget which colours I was using. So, because there's always an array of pencils around me. So I do like to work both eyes at the same time, building up the layers at the same time. One thing, sometimes your subject matter might have different lighting on each eye. So there might be a shadow cast across one half of the subject's face. Now in that case, one eye will be a different colour to the other eye, and these are the things you must keep in mind. That's why I do repeat myself when I say just you must always pay attention to everything about your reference image, from the initial pose that you sketch. You know, something catches your eye when you're looking through your reference images, and it might be just a pose. Just keep in mind all the time to try and be as true as you can to your reference image, unless you're quite, what's the word? Not knowledgeable. If you know what you're doing, then you can alter shadows and things. But that is all dependent on where your light source is coming from. So, and confident, that's the word. So unless you're really, really confident and you really know what you're doing, I wouldn't suggest that you go in and start altering where shadows lie. Now, if there is a shadow laying across, you know, half or a quarter of your subject's face, just go with it. Because if you remove a shadow or add a shadow, it alters a lot. It really does. And in the case of just a portrait of your subject's face, you know, that's a big deal. So keep in mind your reference image at all times. Keep referring to it. Keep the colours in tune with what you've got on your reference image, and you'll be happy and relaxed while you're working. Because really, all the hard work is done. I think the hard work to begin with is getting that sketch down. It's an enjoyable process, but getting the composition correct and things like that. I think that's the hard bit. This is just technique. Once you've learnt technique, this can be the relaxing part. Excuse me. So working the darks again. The underneath of the eyelashes were dark in the reference image, so that helps make the eyes pop a little bit more. And I've added some highlights as well. Now when adding highlights to eyes, if your photograph was taken with a flash on a camera, there'll be like a pinpoint of white light. Now, I don't suggest ever using that in your paintings. The simple reason is, all it denotes is that the original photograph was taken with a flash on. So try to omit that. And if you're unsure about adding highlights, or, you know, if you've got a reference image and all the highlight in the eye is that pinpoint of white where a flash has gone off, if you omit that and you don't know what to put in its place, then I suggest just doing a quick Google search of eyes, or go on two websites that I recommend, pixabay.com and unsplash.com, and on both of those websites there are hundreds and hundreds of copyright-free reference images that you can use for your own artworks. Go on there, look for some, say, mammal eyes or bird eyes, whatever it is you're working on your own project, and look at natural highlights where the animal is outside and it might have the sky reflected in their eyes, or foliage might be reflected in their eyes. Look for things like that, and then replace a pinpoint highlight that's been caused by a camera flash with a more natural looking highlight, and it really does add life. It adds a freshness to paintings. It stops them looking man-made, I guess. So moving on from the eyes, we've got all the darks in, we've popped a few lights in, everything's blended out quite smoothly. Don't forget, you can keep popping back if you're working on your subject on your project and you see something you didn't spot straight away, you can go in and alter it. But for now, move on. So the next thing I'm doing now, I'm popping in some darks. So no detailing yet. When I put the base coat down, I should have gone darker. Now, as you work painting from a white sheet of paper or a beige sheet or grey sheet, whatever colour paper you're working on, the idea is to build what I call a tonal map. So you're building up your base coats, you're getting the mid-ranges in with your base coats. So you're not going to your darkest darks, you're not going to your lightest lights, but you're trying to get all the medium colours in, the medium tones in. And as I work the eyes in with, and especially with those really darks surrounding the eyes, I realised that the darks in my base coat weren't quite dark enough. So I'm darkening them up with a pastel pencil. It's a Caran dash, so nice and soft, laying on its side excuse me, and just letting the pastel pigment glide across the paper, catching the tooth of the paper and just darkening the areas slightly. So I'm not colouring and not filling in the tooth of the paper at all, just very, very gently darkening the areas that I want to be darker. But again, not going too dark because we don't want any dark areas. We don't want to be struggling when applying our lighter coloured details over the top. So always be aware of just what your mediums can do. Before you start on a project, I hadn't used to swatch my art materials, but during the past year or so I swatch everything now. I swatch all my coloured pencils, my paints, everything, so I know exactly what that medium can do. If I haven't, because I use quite a few mediums, and if I haven't used a medium for a while, you get that bit of a rusty feeling when you get a different medium out that you've not used for a while. Even though I've been creating artwork since I was 4 and I'm now 54, if I'm working with pastels or coloured pencils and I've not used, say, acrylics for months, then it's just nice to get back into the swing of things by getting my swatch sheet out, seeing which colours do what, which ones are more opaque, etc., which ones are better for glazing, and it just gives me sort of a boost before I start my next painting. And so just do that with your pastels if you haven't, and it just lets you know what can be achieved with what products. And obviously achievements differ between different brands as well, so what a white pastel pencil might do in one brand might not be the same as what a white pastel pencil can do in another brand, because some are going to be more opaque, some are going to be softer, some you'll be able to sharpen to a fine point, do detailing, some you won't. So here I've just applied a little bit of rusty red to the nose area, and I'm blending it out with a silicone tool. This one is by Royal Sovereign. It's a Royal Sovereign silicone colour shaper. If you don't need these are just tools I've had for, I don't know, 15 years or whatever. You can use makeup brushes, eyeliner brushes, anything, just something small. You can, if the area's not too small, you can use a cotton bud, or your little finger, anything. It's just I had these at hand to the side of me, so I just grabbed one, picked it up and blended it in, but I didn't really need to. And yeah, just if you've not got oodles and oodles of art materials, you don't feel as though you've got to go out and buy everything. You haven't. Just get the most out of what you've got already before you start spending your well-earned money to buy products that you might not need. Utilize what you've got already, and then if you are going to buy products, research them first, read reviews, things like that. Make sure it's something you're going to be using. Make sure you're buying something that adds to what you've already got. You don't want to buy something that's going to detract from the supplies you've already got. Make sure everything you buy is going to be a useful addition to the supplies you've already got, because the worst thing is to buy a new product and then for your old product to be defunct and just sitting there doing nothing, because then that's wasted money and wasted art products. You know, art products that are wasted aren't ones that are used and you make mistakes with. They're the ones that aren't used. They're the wasted art products. So just keep that in mind too, because we've all been there and all done that. You know, somebody reviews something really new and you think, oh, I'd love that, but you don't want to buy it and then not use what you've already got. So yeah, utilize what you've already got. If you've got a cheaper brand of product, say paint or pencil or, you know, pastel pencil or whatever, and you want to start buying sort of the next grade up, use what you've got, and then as that supply runs out, replace it with the better one. So you're still using what you've already got, but you're replacing with a better brand. Okay, so the mouth is in, the nose is in. I've resketched the whisker marks in, just adding a little, my hair floating into frame there. Adding a few highlights to the nose. The nose was really simple, just a red undercoat, burgundy undercoat, dark browns and blacks. Time to start some detailing. So I've come down to the chin just to get a feel for the layering for you, and it's all going to be worked the same pretty much over the face, but the chin had got some relative dark patches in, so I'll add those first. And the pencil I'm using, I'm just trying to see, I do believe it's a Faber Castell pencil, so these are a little bit harder than the Caran pencils. They still lay down the pigment beautifully, but they will retain a sharper point for longer. So they are blendable just like all the other pastel pencils, but they are a little bit harder. And again, I'm working on pastel matte paper. That's Clairefontaine Pastelmat. It's not like sanded paper, and it's not like velour paper. Velour paper, if you've ever felt that, it feels furry, quite fluffy paper. It's got a very deep tooth. Sanded paper feels like, yep, sandpaper. But this one, this Clairefontaine Pastelmat, feels like cork. I think that's the closest I can think of a material that feels like this. It feels like cork. So when you feel it, it doesn't feel like it will hold a lot of layers, but it does. It's really wonderful paper to work with. And the paper that I'm leaning on again is the Clairefontaine. It's a glassine paper, but I think Clairefontaine calls it crystal paper. And it just protects your work against the oils in your hands. It stops you, you know, wiping your hand across your work and smudging it. So I'm going on with a Derwent pencil there in it's like a brown ochre. And now this is a Carbothello pencil that I've sharpened with a knife and sandpaper, and just beginning to apply some detail. Now, as a lighter colour goes across a darker pigment, you will pick up some of the darker pigment. So all I'm doing is wiping it off on a tissue. That's all. So I'm just removing any dark pigment it might have picked up, wiping it off on the tissue, and then I can go back on. And this is definitely a rinse and repeat kind of way of working. It's very therapeutic if you've got a nice big mug of coffee or a glass of wine or some music playing or a podcast on. It's relaxing because the hard work's been done. The composition's done, the sketching is done, everything's where it should be. The base coat's applied so you can see the structure of the head. The eyes are in, so if the eyes go wrong, generally, you know, things get put on hold and either restarted or completely reworked. So yeah, and the nose is in place. So yeah, now it's just technique, building up the fur. So went in with the dark brown first, popped some guidelines in. Then we went in with sort of a an ochre, brown ochre colour, and now we're going in with this cream. Whites we leave right to the very end, so less is more when it comes to white. Don't, because you know, snow leopards, everybody thinks they're going to be white and because they live in the snow, but they're not. They're generally speaking fawns and greys in the coat, lots of different fawn colours, lots of different grey colours, and again it all depends on what lighting they're under. So quick movement of the board so it's easier for me. Now I want the edges, again this is artistic license, it wasn't in my reference photo. I want the edges of the snow leopard's head to sort of fade into the background. I want them to be out of focus because I want the focus to be on the subject's eyes, really, on the middle, the central portion of the face. So all I'm doing is I'm breaking up the outline. So I've not sharpened this pastel pencil too sharp because I don't want any fine detailed lines in going around the edges. Again, this is a Caran pastel pencil that I'm using, so they're quite soft, very blendable. And don't forget, if you're working over a background that's darker in colour, you might pick up a little bit of that pigment. So don't forget to wipe the darker pigment off on a tissue or on a scratch piece of paper that you've got next to you, or on your t-shirt or your jeans, however you want to work. Going in with a Carbothello pastel pencil here, sort of a yellow ochre colour, and I'm gliding the side of this pastel pencil across the surface of the cream pastel pencil that I've just applied. And this is called glazing, and you'll do this in oils as well, and watercolours and acrylics, and it's just tinting a lighter colour with a different colour. So that's all I was doing there. So I've just tinted some of the cream to give it a yellow hue. Now going in with sort of a lemony colour. Again, doesn't matter what colours you use, it's all about your contrast. So as long as I'm not using, you know, reds or purple, although you could use reds and purples, it just looked like the snow leopard was under a different lighting, artificial lighting it would look like, wouldn't it? So we're just going in with different colours, different lighter colours, working dark to light in that area. And the same was done on this lower right hand side. This just building up the creams, a little bit of yellow ochre, popping the markings back in. And now I just want to show you how I concentrate on the shorter hairs, so underneath the eye. So again, as just the same as I worked on the chin, getting a little bit of a dark brown in there, a few guidelines just to help my eyes and my brain concentrate on what I'm doing and where I'm doing it. So always looking at the reference image. I know I talk about that a lot, but it is really, really important, not only for the direction of the hair, but the length of the hair as well. So at this point I'd be looking for where the darkest areas in this part of the hair are, where the longest hairs are, where the shortest hairs are, and the direction. Now going back now with a Caran pastel pencil, I've sharpened it with a knife, taken some of the wood off with a knife, sharpened the pigment itself on a piece of fine sandpaper, and now I'm pushing the strokes. So you can push or pull, whichever way feels comfortable for you, and as it flicks over that darker area, it is picking up a little bit of the darker pigment, so occasionally I'm wiping that off on the tissue. Now as you can see, as I use pencils, I do turn them in my hand, so I rotate them round in my fingers, and I honestly don't think about it. It's just something I've done, you know, been doing artwork for over 50 years, so it is something that I do, but I don't consciously think about doing. But what it is, I'm turning, when I feel that I'm losing an edge of the pencil, I'm just turning it and working the next sharper edge of the pencil. It helps retain the point of a pencil, whether that's graphite or coloured pencil or pastel pencil. It means you don't have to sharpen them as often, and it gives you finer detailed marks if that's what you want. If you don't want finer detailed marks, if you want to use wider marks, then just let your pencil blunt off. And what you can do, if you're working on a really big piece, or even a small piece actually, and you find your point disappearing, but you don't want to keep sharpening it, then what I suggest is use it while it's sharp on areas where you want finer detail. As it dulls down, move to an area of your painting where you don't need sharper details, where a blunt pencil will suffice. Then work on that area. Once it gets too blunt for that area, then sharpen it and go back to the area where it needs more detail and work like that, and then you won't be having to sharpen your pencil too often. I will do a little snippet video actually about sharpening pastel pencils, because I do get a few people asking about that. And as I said, I don't use a pencil sharpener. I use a knife, a Stanley knife, and a piece of sandpaper, and it's really quick, it's really easy. You don't have to waste anything either, because the pigment that you sand off is water soluble with pastels, so you can actually use them as a paint. I'll cover that in I'll do a little 15-minute video. You could actually do a project just using the pigment that you sand off for paint and then using the pastel for the detail. So I'll do that. Okay, so just as we worked the other areas, we're just working dark to light. Now your darks are already there because I've already applied the base coats. Now I'm back in with the silicone colour shaper. You don't have to use this. I was just playing really in a little world of my own actually. I forgot I'd got the camera running. So yeah, just blending out a little bit in between the highlighted areas. Don't forget you can keep going back over until the tooth of your paper is full, and then you could apply a fixative and then apply more layers on top, but I generally don't do that. So we've worked the cheeks now, and we're going up onto the top of the muzzle. This is where you really do need to keep your eye again on the reference image, because on big cats, well, on a lot of mammals actually, the hairs around this area form patterns. They change directions, excuse me, and they're very short. Excuse me, that's my dog barking at the postman. Sky, lay down. Sorry about that. Yeah, the hairs change size and change direction quite a lot around these areas, so do keep that in mind as you're working from your reference images. Some of the hairs also will be facing you, and if hairs are facing the viewer, all you'll see are the tips of the hair, so you can actually dot those in. So don't draw a hairline, don't draw them in as longer hairs if they're not actually there. If you're just seeing the top surface of the hairs, if the hairs are facing you, then just put little dots. So just stipple those in. Yeah, I've got our dog's a lurcher, so she doesn't like the postman. I do believe it's the fluorescent jackets they wear, because she's fine with everybody else. So at least she's made herself know. It's better than snoring. I can think of other noises she could be making that would be even worse. So barking's not too bad, I guess. Okay, so this is quite self-explanatory working around here. Just keeping my eye on the reference image. Keep referring to it. As I was saying, I don't print any reference images out. I wouldn't be happy with the environmental issues if everybody printed reference images out. The inks and paper. And once you've printed it out and you've done your project, what do you do with it then? You know, does it go into your recycling bag? Do you keep it forever and not need it? So I do just work from what I see on screen. I download my photographs onto my PC, transfer them over onto my iPad to work from, and that way, another good thing about working from a digital image is that if you need to see more detail, you can just enlarge it on your screen. You know, you don't have to keep printing out different sized reference images of different parts of the subject. So that's another good thing too. Excuse me. All this talking, I need a drink. So we're 45 minutes in, and wow, if anybody's still watching this, thank you. That's amazing. Hope you're all having a good day. So yeah, so here we go, working around different direction again as we go around this part of the muzzle, around the little markings. And I hope you can see now why we did the dark undercoat as well. It saves a lot of time. If I didn't do that, you'd have to be using different coloured pastel pencils to create the surface detail, if you know what I mean. You'd have to be using, you know, the darker greys, darker browns to put the shaded areas in, whereas doing it this way, letting some of that undercoat shine through between the detailed parts you're putting on now, you know, gives the animal form. It's already got the form underneath, but it also adds to the shape and texture on top too. I hope you're seeing that, and I hope I'm describing it okay. If you'd like me to cover any different subjects or different mediums, or a certain subject in a certain medium, just pop it in the comment below, and I'll put it on my to-do list. If you've already subscribed, that's wonderful. Thank you very much for subscribing to my YouTube channel. If you haven't subscribed yet, just please hit the subscribe button. I'd really appreciate that. And if you haven't liked this video and you like what you're seeing, then please hit like too. That's great, thank you. And if at all possible, if you could share my channel with family and friends who might be interested, that'd really help my algorithms too. Okay, so just it really is just a rinse and repeat. Keep doing the same thing. I just didn't want to skip past this because it does give you an insight into how I'm working, so that's why I didn't want to suddenly zip forward to the next part. Okay, little pause there, and I was sharpening my pencil, so not really taking it too sharp. And again, as you can see, I'm turning it round in my hand. And now the hairs are coming towards me, so slightly down and towards me, and very short. They're very short in that area. So keeping that in mind. And no straight lines. There's, you know, animal hair. There's no straight lines, so don't try and do a row of, you know, hairs like, you know, soldiers in a row, because it'll look completely false. So keep the hairs going in the right direction with a slight curve on each hair. Make them nice and random. Random as in, don't try and fill every single space with a hair. So between this clip and the last clip, I removed the glassine paper and I turned the board upside down just because it was more comfortable for me, and work the other side, so they were meeting in the middle. So the middle line running up the middle of the nose, onto the forehead, there's that middle line, and the hairs coming from either side away from the eyes towards the middle, and they peak just in the middle. So I've just done that, and now I'm working up towards the top of the head. So again, the hairs aren't too long in this area, keeping my eye on the reference image, Got a tissue there to wipe off any dark pigment I may pick up because I'm working over a darker area. And yeah, just carrying on. So tiny hairs, all running in the same direction, but not sort of straight. Now it does look like I've put a row in there, but they are different shapes, and I'm scattering them now, working as I come down. So it's hard to explain without actually talking you through it while I'm doing it, because this is something as well. The more artworks you create, I don't actually think about what I'm doing when I'm doing it. I was explaining that to my husband earlier on. When I'm creating these works of art, I'm not thinking about what I'm doing because I've already learnt the techniques. I think the only time I stop and think about what I'm doing is if something goes wrong. You know, if I need to sort of alter what I'm doing, then I'll have a quick think about what I'm doing. But generally, things like this Snow Leopard, it's something that I've done many times before. Not this particular project, but similar. And so, yeah, once you know a technique and you're comfortable with a technique, you can think about something else. So sitting here, doing the voiceover for the video, and you can tell I don't do a script. I can't believe some people write scripts for their YouTube channels. Maybe I should, but oh no, I just like to waffle. Nice and natural. We'll keep it nice and natural. If anybody wants me to write a script, you wouldn't be getting a video every week because it'd take me forever. So yeah, what I was saying, yeah, it's something I just don't generally think about too much. Once you know a technique, you know a technique, and then you can bend it to do what you want it to do. Popping in the whiskers, same again, just keeping nice steady hand, making sure they're the right width, they're the right length, and just popping them in, keeping an eye on your reference image. And again, whiskers, if there's a whisker that you don't like the look of on your reference image, don't put it in your painting. You know, if there's a feather out of place on a bird on a reference image, if it's sticking out at an odd angle and all the rest of the plumage is laying flat, don't put it in. Just, you know, a little bit of artistic license. And there we have it. So I thought, you know, lots of people like to see tape being removed. I think it's quite therapeutic. I had a bit of an issue with some of the tape, so I ran a hairdryer over it just to loosen up the tackiness of it. And then these two pieces, the remaining top and bottom, came off okay. So I thought I'd show you that. Some people like it. There you have him. And the acid-free masking tape, you use it once, acid-free washi tape, and you throw it away. So it's not reusable. And there you have him. Snow Leopard that I photographed at Twycross Zoo in Warwickshire, 2011 it might have been, actually thinking about it. So if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Please hit like if you've liked this video. Comment in the comments below what you'd like to see me do in the future, what mediums, what subjects. Thank you for watching. If you've stayed till, you know, this far, 53 minutes, wow, you pat on the back, you need a coffee. I need a coffee. Thanks so much. Thank you for all my subscribers. I love you all. You're just amazing. Your comments on social media are wonderful. Yeah, just can't thank you enough. And I strive to take my YouTube channel to the next level this year. So thank you for encouraging me along the way. And see you all in the next video. Take care and bye for now. Bye.